Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. Now, this week, I would say that I'm joined by Amelia Sciandra, but actually, I am the one not joining Amelia Sciandra, isn't that right?
That's right, yes. I had this conversation solo with the really, really fascinating Dr. Rebekah Smith. She is what is called the Film Festival Doctor. And she has made her career as someone who's able to offer advice and mentoring and just all kinds of sort of support and help for filmmakers who are on the festival circuits. And she even wrote a book about it called Film Festivals and Looking After Your Mental Health, because she was aware of the kind of difficulties of the festival circuit and what filmmakers go through to get their films seen. So she and I had a really, really interesting conversation that you're going to hear now, but you will not hear Dan chiming in.
You lucky things.
Okay, so without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Rebekah. How are you, Rebekah?
I am good, thank you. Over here in Dallas, it's a little bit drab weather, but it's still warm. So it's like, raining, but you've got shorts and a t-shirt on. So it's strange.
It is very strange. Very, very different, I think, from the rainy days in the UK in January, isn't it?
Yes, it's not the same thing. So just having to adapt a bit, but it's all good. I know how to work it now.
That's terrific. Yes, wonderful. Well, we'll talk to you perhaps in a little bit about how and why you came to the US or went to the US, I should say. Yep. The American is podcasting from London and the Brit is podcasting from the US. So that is an interesting swap there, isn't it? So tell us, Rebekah, you're the Film Festival Doctor. What a title.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what it means, what that is? What is the Film Festival Doctor? What is it that you do currently in your role as the Film Fest Guru?
So I am a film festival consultant and I help filmmakers get their film seen in festivals around the world. So typically people come to me and say, I've made a film. What do I do with it? Which festivals do I submit to? Where should it be seen? Where best to place it? And we create a very streamlined and targeted strategy that contains the right kinds of festivals for that person's film.
Amazing. And how long have you been doing this? How many filmmakers do you think you've worked with over your career?
So we've helped our clients win now over 2,000 awards. It began as a very small enterprise because nobody was doing this really as a full-time job back in 2010. There were people who I think might be doing it maybe on a side, but to actually become a full service agency, there was a company doing it, but don't do it anymore. And they inspired me to build that model to make it a full service, full-time job. And people said to me in the beginning, well, no one else does this really. No one knows what this is. So you might have to work for free to prove this works, which I did. And they were right. So in the beginning, I'd say it became officially a company because I based it and built it, first of all, in the UK, where I'm born and raised and where I was living at the time. And it was the time I just did a sole trader because I thought, let's see how this goes. And then someone was like, no, make it a limited company and start it up when you move to London to build it up. So that was good advice. And now it's, so officially it's been 2010. I've worked with probably, I'd say, over now 800 filmmakers around the world, predominantly the UK, USA, and South Africa.
Oh, wow. In South Africa. Very cool. And in terms of as you were talking about this kind of journey you took where, am I a sole trader? Am I a private limited company working for free at the beginning? What made you want to do this? What were you doing before this? Were you a filmmaker yourself? How did you find this niche to fill, as it were?
So it was all totally by a happy accident. So I moved to Wales, in Aberystwyth in Wales in the UK.
Mhm.
I was living before and doing my master's degree in Cheltenham in Gloucestershire.
Mhm.
And I was like, I knew I wanted to do something in film, but
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be research and academia. But someone was like, well, you've got a really good thesis here that you work with, because I work on Tarantino's films and do a lot of stuff about him at that time. So I had to move to Aberystwyth to work with this gentleman who was experienced in doing audience research in film and emotional studies. So that's where I ended up. And I
Wow.
wasn't sure if I was going to be doing this PhD forever, like doing academia. I was going to finish the PhD, but I thought there's something else I need to do or missing.
Mm.
And I got asked to co-produce a film festival that's taking place in the university called the Abattoir Horror Festival, which is an amazing festival. And I was like, yes, because it will be a happy distraction from a very solitary kind of job with a PhD. When you're researching and writing, it's very like, by yourself.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, to get me, get a bit more social life. And then that hobby or happy distraction, I realized when I was producing the festival that I loved doing this job. I absolutely loved producing a festival. And then when I spoke to filmmakers, I asked them what they liked and disliked about film festivals, because I didn't my usual kind of like research head came on, because obviously in a PhD
Sure.
doing like
Yes.
hardcore. And then I said, what do you like and dislike about film festivals? And they all said the same thing. They said, we love film festivals. We actually don't know what we're doing, because we're just hoping for the best. And we submit on, back in the day, it was called withoutabox.com, submit our film to festivals. We're just hoping, see what happens and, spray and pray, I suppose, because we don't know who to talk to like put a plan together, a strategy. We're just, blinded. Is that blinding the blind? So that would be
Yes.
nice to have somebody to help us. And I was like, oh, does anybody do this? So we looked online on Google, because back in the day then, Pinterest, Instagram and Facebook were not used in the same way as they are now for businesses.
Right.
And we looked on Google, and there was that one company at the time. And then it just helped me develop the model to then, make it into a full service agency. It was really hard, because I didn't have any business knowledge. I mean, I knew kind of like, how to work with, filmmakers at that point, because I was obviously with the festival, we had to work with a lot of filmmakers, but business was new to me. So I learned kind of on the job, but it was, this kind of thing I was doing. There was no real model to really build upon. Like really one thing, not like it was, open up a hairdresser's or something. It was very different. So it was a big, massive learning curve during that time, which also helped me finish my PhD. So it all was like, literally, there was no plan to wake up. It wasn't when I was born, so I'm going to be a film festival consultant and call myself the film festival doctor. It was like going to be at that point when I was younger, more like a hairdresser. But it just went a different route, and I'm glad it did, because it found my true calling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's terrific. Yeah, I think what you're talking about, right? That kind of, when you've made a film and then you say, okay, what do I do with it now? It can sort of feel like this enormous question that there are a variety of answers to, and sort of figuring out how to navigate that, especially if you've never done it before, is a huge part of what makes it difficult. is sort of feeling like you're out there alone. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that. I think your work has obviously taken you on this quite interesting, perhaps, path in terms of where the film world and the film festival world and mental health meet. So could you talk a little bit about kind of how that journey took place, and what kind of led you to what is eventually your latest ebook?
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed is a lot of filmmakers were having difficulty with rejection letters, because as honest, festivals don't give you a letter or an email saying exactly why your film was not selected. It's something can be very generic, like, thank you for submitting, but we didn't get in, and good luck in the future.
Yes.
So you don't know why, and that can cause the stress, because it's not specific, like, oh, there was this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other wrong with it, or whatever, or we loved it but couldn't find a room for it, or whatever. Because you don't know, it does become quite stressful. So I encourage filmmakers. What I noticed was happening, first of all, was that they were having issues with rejection letters. They've taken it very personal, or like, they don't like my movie and assume it was like a bad review, or that it wasn't very well received, and it was all this rejection. So I saw the emotional attachment to their film come through during this phase. And I realized that what you really need when you get a rejection letter is to pivot your strategy if required, if you get a lot of no's from a similar type of festival, but also to remember to never assume or take things personally because you don't know, and instead see it as positive. That you can then just, change the strategy, but then, or stay strong and then something will come in soon. So it was quite a complex thing to figure out with them, because it was quite those that are very attached to the film could not separate it. And also what I told them during this phase is I noticed another problem happening was that obviously making a film is a very emotionally draining thing. Everyone knows that makes a film. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to get off the ground sometimes, a film. But I noticed that some people were finding it hard to separate themselves from their film and to see it as a product. So basically, when you finish making a film, obviously the creative process is making the film. Obviously, you've spent, all that time raising the funds, you've made it, post-production. But when it's finished from post-production, it then becomes a product to sell or to get seen, or both. And I did say to people that, when you finished your film, nobody in the area of sales, distribution, festivals, and PR marketing really care about, it might have taken you 10 years to make.
Right.
They see it now with their eyes. How can we make money from this? How will this suit our audience in a film festival's case? How will it help the festival? How will it help the filmmaker? So they look at it very differently. And some filmmakers couldn't understand why they weren't looking at it the same way as them, in a different kind of framing. So I taught a lot of the filmmakers to, detach emotionally and cut a cord from the film and let it have its own life, move on, but don't take anything personally, and to remember that this is now a product and it has its own separate life to what you birthed. And that can be hard for filmmakers, especially when it's a passion project. You got to leave the passion aside. That can all be done in the process of making it. But then you can still be passionate about it on your social media when you're at a film festival. But now it's the business head comes in. And that's what helped me write my book, because I was seeing filmmakers sometimes go into rock bottom of clients of mine. So I put together this ebook which explained how to approach a festival rejection letter in the right way, and also how to see it positively. And also gave them, say, a toolbox, which is a toolbox full of techniques to draw upon if they're finding it very difficult to separate and to cope with rejection, being stuff like a meditation techniques, emotional freedom technique, and also a book to read called The Four Agreements, telling you how not to take things personally and how to assume, to help them just on this journey, which can be very draining and intense if you're not in the right headspace.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. That's such a great point. And I think that differentiation, that sort of releasing of the film into the world and it still being sort of your baby, but also allowing yourself to see it not emotionally, is obviously a big, most people put blood, sweat, and tears into their films. And so to have to kind of turn that off almost and feel that the film is a product can be a big transition. I'm sure you must have seen, for lots of people, making that transition is probably the most difficult thing. When, in terms of your kind of approach to this and how you've experienced it, were you ever submitting films to festivals? Have you had the experience of being on the other side beyond helping to run the festival that you did when you were a young person, or did you then go on to run other festivals? How did you kind of begin to see the other side of it, as it were?
Yeah. So one of the things I offer to filmmakers is I do offer a service where we complete submissions and organize all the festival screening and materials for all the screenings that come up. And that was when I noticed, how filmmakers kind of really cope with rejection, because rejection is part of the process. It's going to happen.
Of course.
And also seeing sometimes attachment to one certain festival, which was not healthy, because I thought that would just be, the be all end all and the dream would be over, then get in. So I noticed that in those patterns, and I kind of helped heal the filmmakers and how to approach the projection and how to respond to it in the right way. So it's kind of like, having them holding hands on their journey. I have programmed other festivals, on juries over the festivals, but I kind of moved away from that and then focused more on my business, because I was seeing there was such a big gap and a need that needed to be all the time and attention. Because I left Abattoir when I moved to London, and then obviously in the US here, not, but I still support it and send films their way for their potential selection. And we have a brilliant relationship, and that's also one of the best festivals in the world, not just in genre. So that's how I learned it. Really, was just focusing really, more intensively on filmmakers and seeing them, how they responded in their emotions and how to look after them on that process. Some wouldn't have it though, because some would be detached, and those were the ones that got the most results because they weren't expecting anything.
Sure.
So it is a big process. They move on because they've got the next film that they've got to work on that's going to be a different kind of challenge, and they're focused on that, which is a good thing. And they can trust us, look after it, and look after their baby and get it out in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, because I'm an American here and you're a British person there. Have you experienced, or what are the differences in I guess in both British and American filmmakers' approach to the festival strategies? And then also, do you have any insight on kind of what American film festivals are looking for versus what British film festivals are looking for? Have you seen any differentiation there?
So I think, to be honest, the patterns in terms of how filmmakers deal with rejection, what filmmakers want and goals and budgets, they're all pretty similar in the US, UK. There's not like, it's also the US and the UK. It's pretty equal. And the same in South Africa, actually. But South Africa have a different kind of problem because I have a client base there. But obviously their problem is exchange rate, because the dollar and the pound compared to South African rand is a big difference, and it's a massive difference. We think it's like pretty bad going from the UK to the USA and coming back and forth, but no, it is a lot different when you're in South Africa. So there is really a budget issue. But in terms of goals, expectations, it's pretty similar. In terms of, like their approach, and you get some very ambitious US and UK filmmakers, and you get some that are very neutral. They're all pretty much, it's like that kind of similarities, to be honest. In terms of what festivals in the US want compared to the UK, again, it depends on the festival, because every festival is different in terms of how they program what they look for. A lot of UK festivals do love like really strong British films that just show excellence in British filmmaking that are really strong. And in the US, it is a bit more varied, because a lot of them do like, really good British films because they have a bit of a soft spot for the UK. But then you'll find that, for example, a lot of festivals that run in LA love very like British movies. Sorry. So again, a lot of festivals in LA, for example, love films which are like a love letter to LA, or show like a different side of LA. So it all kind of goes back to treat each festival differently and what their mission statement is, what they look for. For example, maybe like a general festival in the US, let's say the Nashville Film Festival, they do love groundbreaking and interesting, innovative features from around the world. And they obviously do have a soft spot and a separate program for music documentary films, because obviously Nashville is home for Dolly Parton.
Right.
So that kind of thing. So every festival is different. And also there are some festivals which don't program certain genres because their audience will not buy a ticket and they won't make money for the venue and for them, and it's not going to have a good result for the filmmaker. Yeah. So again, it's having to pay careful attention to their themes, their content, what wins, and knowing what they want.
And so when you're, there's, now that I'm hearing you talk and just thinking about the festival strategies I've developed in a very, very small way for some of our Young Film Academy films, you're not going to give it all away. Obviously, this is your business, but do you have any kind of top tips for, let's say, especially someone who's got their first maybe short film that they've made and they think, I want to try it out on the festival circuit? Do you have any kind of tips for that very first endeavor out into this world of what kind of approach to take?
Yeah, the first thing you must do, which is extremely important, is before you do any submissions and start creating a strategy or start running around doing this, that, and the other, is to stop and ask other people, your peers, people like me, festival strategists, people that have experience in the circuit, is to step back and ask, have I got a film that festivals want? And if so, what deadlines of festivals. Because some people will say to me, right, we've made the film, we want to make sure we get the deadline in for Tribeca, for South by Southwest. I'm like, oh, well, hang on. Have we got something that they're going to want? Is the first question. Going that way could be wasting money, demoralizing if you keep it nose and can't detach, but also not the best route to take to get the right results. You need to know what kind of product you have made and what kind of festivals are going to want to screen it is really crucial. So it's important to take maybe a week or two out from it after finishing it. And then ask that question to someone like me and your peers who knows the area of film festivals and think, yeah, it could be like, yes, you've got a really good film here that could be good for X, Y, and Z. For example, say it's a horror short film. The question could be, right, okay, can it break out of the horror niche, which is still a great niche and a big niche and some really massive festivals in there? Can it do well in that niche and excel in the top tier? But could it also break out to more general festivals that aren't genre specific, but have genre programs that would like this? Can it speak to a wider, more mainstream, non-genre audience? Is a key thing to ask. If the answer is yes, you can then expand the strategy. If it's going to do best festivals which focus upon the genre where it will thrive, then continue what's good. That can be something that you can also identify when you get the rejection. So it can be like, okay, well, it's not getting into these general festivals, but it is getting into a ton of student festivals and a ton of genre festivals, and it's doing well. So let's just pivot and keep submitting to those, strike while the iron's hot, put the money in the right place, and get the results coming. Is the way you have to really focus on it. It could be that you have a film that can do all sorts of those niches. I had a short that did women's festivals, genre festivals, general festivals, and big shorts festivals, because it had a story that could translate to those types of audiences that were more general and mainstream than being like too niche. Sometimes you get films that just speak to a local audience, which is fine. It just won't travel as far and wide. I had a film actually that was from South Africa that was a documentary about Nando's. So Nando's is from South Africa, and it's not though all over the world like it is in the UK has Nando's, but other countries don't, and the countries that don't didn't get it because they're like, what's Nando's? Yeah, and it couldn't really like break out that niche because it was very specific to a South African culture. So it did well in festivals that had countries. It did well at countries that had Nando's at those areas, and the festivals were like, "Oh, we know Nando's, and they sponsor us." So that's a way in. But it's as I say, it's very much a case by case basis. But you have to know your film. So my motto is: know your film, know your festivals.
That's great. And I'm just thinking about for some of our young people who perhaps have never done this and don't have any connections to people in the festivals and maybe don't have any budget to hire someone like you. Do you think that when you made your first film and you're a young person, do you think that it's better to focus on a kind of smaller number of festivals, or is it good to kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks when you're just starting out?
The key thing is to be streamlined and focused and very strategic. So I wouldn't advise just to like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. My advice would be is to be very targeted and streamlined and focused to your festivals. So say it's a student horror film again, then when you got the feedback and it's like it's going to be a difficult sell to like break out of those niches, but as your budget is tight, focus on festivals that are going to be more of a chance than being too outside the box or a higher risk, so you'll just waste the money and you won't get the money back because you don't get the money back from festivals you don't get in. So I would not advise to do not do the general broad, wide-reaching approach of festivals. Be very streamlined and targeted and know what festivals are going to particularly want your film, what they're interested in to get more of a chance of success.
And do you think that, so the tool that we use these days is Film Freeway, and in terms of research for film festivals, when you're talking about being strategic and being streamlined, so really doing the research beyond Film Freeway, do you think that there's is it a matter of really visiting each of these festivals' websites and seeing what's on there? What is the best way to kind of approach that research element of getting to know the festivals?
So Film Freeway does help. Not every single festival is on Film Freeway. A lot of the bigger ones, like obviously the big ones like Cannes and Berlin, and Venice don't use it. Tribeca and Toronto do. Locarno don't, for example. So those ones don't use it because they don't need to.
Right.
But you can certainly, at those festivals which don't use it, look at their websites and it tells you, look at the themes and what they're looking for. Look at the spotlight. Look at the themes that they explain, can help you research. Now, the way to research Film Freeway does have some very good things about it. There are some things that aren't great about it, but there's also some really, really good things. So it has a lot of value. But to do the research, the key thing to do would be, say, right, you've got a festival that you're keen on, or you want to look at festivals in horror. So you look on Film Freeway and you'll see there's going to be, for example, the Horror House Film Festival. So the best way to research it is look at the page, look how many years it's been running for, look at the pictures. Do they actually screen the films? Is it a physical live festival? Are there filmmakers in attendance? Are they winning awards? Is there Q&As? Is there networking? Look at all the pictures can help you think of if it is, a real festival or not. But also in terms of what they want and the content looking for, that tells you a lot. On the right side of the page, it has the categories to submit to. And you'll see there what kind of categories they are open to. Do they have do they welcome documentary narrative shorts? Do they welcome documentary shorts and features, or is it mainly narrative because it's horror? Do they have trailers? Do they have a certain genre they want? You see, they might say something like a sci-fi short, a horror short, a slasher short, a fantasy short. So you know what they're looking for by looking at the categories. And the same, for example, with a good one is the San Diego International Film Festival. So they actually are very good in Pacific because they have categories, the short narrative, short documentary, but they also have ones that are focused upon equestrian films and also films about the environment.
Okay,
so it's like,
very
okay,
niche.
they're looking for films. Yeah, looking for stuff in this niche. So if I got a film they're going to want, well, I have a film about, horses. So yes, so put it in that category to then get seen by the right programming team who might appreciate a different way and think if it can fit their audience.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions as well, in terms of, because as we say, Film Freeway is a tool, there are good things about it and bad things about it. Is there anything that you might see on a film festival's either Film Freeway page or their own website that would be a kind of red flag for you, a sort of alarm bell of maybe don't submit to this festival? I know especially young people, first-time filmmakers, they can be susceptible to kind of some of these things that might not be the best use of their potentially quite small budget for these things. So are there any kind of red flags you might be able to recommend people kind of avoid?
Yeah. So the key thing I would really avoid is online film festivals, because they are not film festivals. So what I mean by that is you probably come across when you're researching something like the Best Shorts Awards or the Accolade Global Film Competition. If you look at the pictures, they're not a physical live festival, and they won't help you because they're not film festivals. I mean, they're online scams, really. So there's one actually that we research. So I'm obviously Dallas based, and I know all the festival programmers here in Dallas and outside of Dallas. So we're all kind of close knit group of good people. And there was one that popped up, and I was like, this is odd. And it said it was the Dallas Shorts Awards. And the person that run it were not people that in our circle. So I thought we should look into this further. So the guy who runs the Dallas Film Festival was like, okay, well, we'll do some research with his team. And then they sent an email saying, we want to sponsor the festival because we're local. And they were like, oh, yes, call this number. And it was a call center in India. And it's this like Indian company just, going random big cities in the US and making them awards things and, getting money. And obviously that's not a film festival. And the pictures, don't show a physical film festival anyway. So I would avoid those like the plague. And you'll get loads of emails to submit to those things, like the Berlin Shorts Awards. And, these aren't physical events. So it's really important that you don't submit, because it won't do anything for you in the film. Could actually damage the film and devalue the worth of the film by submitting to those things, because they're absolutely pointless. So that would be a massive red flag. What I also suggest as well is if it's a first year festival, do a bit more extra research. Look at the people that run it. What are their backgrounds? Have they run festivals before? Are they in that world? Are they just finding it something to do? Will they get an audience? Look at the Instagram, how focused it is and professional it is a good piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be, I know that, obviously that's a big part of, and you mentioned this before, right? On Film Freeway, it tells you how many years the festival has been running. So obviously if it's been running for 1 year, you don't want to just say no way because maybe it's new and it's good. But obviously, like you say, do a little bit more research to make sure that you aren't dumping money into something that actually isn't, as you say, going to do your film any good, or potentially, as you say, be detrimental to its reputation, considering that.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. And I was thinking as well, when let's say, for example, you're a student and you have your first student film and you've done everything, you've taken Rebekah's advice and you've made a really streamlined plan and you have, a certain number that you're applying to for the certain budget that you have and you've really been decisive about it. And you submit to 15 festivals and you get 15 rejections. You've talked a little bit about this kind of notion of resilience and things. What would you say is the kind of number one thing you would recommend if you're getting lots of rejections or maybe all rejections? If you've done everything that you think you ought to have in the beginning, do you have any advice for kind of what's that next step afterwards? If you feel like you've done what you were meant to do, but it still isn't working out?
I think the key thing there would be to add another layer to your strategy and also more submissions of the right kind of niche. Mm-hmm. So, for example, one invitation to screen out of 11 submissions is a good result nowadays. But that's already showing you that maybe it just needs to be more streamlined because your film might be a little bit more niche. So I'd say, for example, look at the patterns. If you're getting all these no's that come in 15 festivals, which are general short film festivals, but your film is LGBT by a female director, then tap into the LGBT and the women's festivals. There will be a home for it, but you could be aiming at those big top tier ones that it might not be suitable for. So, for example, say you just went on to like the big BAFTA, BIFA, and Oscar qualified festivals, those 15, because there are so oversubscribed and it's a numbers game with those ones and it's tough. It could be a good idea to think, right, well, let's just not go down a tier, but let's still go to the really good festivals that are on that verge of being that level of festival and get it seen and maybe tap into the niche. So, for example, if you didn't submit to the Frameline Film Festival, which is an LGBT festival, which is Oscar qualified, then that could want it there. Chicago Reeling is the same one as well. Find the niche in the audience. It could be that these 15 festivals like the film a lot, but there's just no audience for it and it's just a bit too fit. So if you go into more like in your niches, you can then tap into that. You'll then find more of acceptance rate. So it's really important to add different layers and not just do 15 of the same level and tier, but bringing the niches more. So if those 15 were all variety, if those 15 were say all general festivals that didn't have any particular angle to them or a niche like LGBT or women or whatever, then add another layer and then see how well it's doing. And those festivals in their niches like horror, women and LGBT and documentary, for example, they are all hard to get into at the top level. I mean, like obviously with documentary, you've got like Dogfest, Hot Dogs. They're big, and they're still big to launch a film and to get a short film scene. So, they're not small, they're massive. It's just different perceptions. When people only know the same ones, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to highlight there the ratio that you said. Did you say 1 in 11 acceptances is a good rate? Is that what you said?
Yes. If your film is solid and a good film, 1 invite out of 11 submissions is a good result nowadays by doing it on yourself and, starting out kind of thing. I sometimes get a bit more than that because we're very targeted and knowing what the festival programmers want, we can put a plan together. But that's kind of average for short films nowadays because there's so many. That's also probably with features as well, but there's just a lot of content that you have to get through. So yes, that's the average. Yeah.
Yeah. So not even 10%, which is, I think, a good, it sort of highlights what you spoke about at the beginning, which is, I come from an acting background. And of course, we always say for actors, and especially young people wanting to be actors, that rejection is a huge part of being an actor, right? Out of tons of auditions that you do, the number of jobs you book might be quite small. And we're talking about really kind of similar numbers here of putting the film out there, and really, about 10% are yes, we want you kind of thing. So it is good to keep a mind on that sense of resilience, and as you say, sort of separating the film from you. The product of the film from yourself as the filmmaker or the team kind of behind it. And I was just thinking about that kind of sense of resilience and the sort of long-term mental health practices. And I was just wondering, in terms of that, you could be submitting your film to festivals for over a year, right? Depending on the rules of the festival and when the film has to be made to be submitted and all of that kind of thing. It could be a very long process. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that long-term sense of it and the long-term care of your mental health beyond perhaps just when you wake up to the rejection email and you don't sort of then fall into a pool of self-doubt and self-pity. Do you have any kind of maybe umbrella advice for the long-term approach to the festival circuit and being a filmmaker who's entering festivals?
Well, first of all, it's a good point you say that, because the festival journey is long haul. It's not a quick process. It's a slow burner. So, for example, when you do submissions, you won't get results overnight. It does take a couple of months. Like, it could take 3 months or more. When you submit to a festival, say in January, that runs in October, it's going to be waiting for a result for a while.
Right.
So it's important that you detach in that process. But in terms of like an umbrella general term, I'd say would be to detox and cleanse. And that can be done via meditation, and also just taking a time out from festivals and just look at your film freeway once a week, check everything's up to date, everything that's outstanding, complete, and get in a routine, but don't be obsessive about it. I mean, I use Film Freeway. I mean, my team uses it every single, and I'm seeing them out every day because we're doing submissions a lot, and we've got to keep on top of things and answer questions about it. But then when, as a filmmaker, you haven't got to do that. So once a week will be fine. And as a general umbrella term, in addition to meditation, I'd also say to learn a new hobby and learn to detach, because that can help you detach by doing something else that you haven't learned before, and not, and to remove attachment and cut a cord from the film. And a lot of the times it's interesting to see what's underneath the stress of people who can't detach. A lot of the time it can be anxiety about, this film's got to rely on this film to make me, to break me into the big time.
Right.
That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to detach from that and see what it gives you. And then it gives you stepping stones to get where you need to be for the next project. Or it could be that film does really well. It's all different, but having an expectation how they want you, or how you want it to go and respond, is not always the best way. There's a lot of surprise in the festival circuit, which was good surprises. A lot of things do pop up that you might not always expect. So my advice would be to be open and detach, and keep detaching on a regular basis, so you don't slip in to the stress ball when it's not going the way you want, because it is going the way that it's supposed to go. You have to just accept it and detach from wanting it to be a certain way that you're not going to. If you want it to be a certain way, sometimes you can miss learning something really important about you in the film. So to be open,
absolutely,
to be open to detaching.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. To kind of give yourself the space to separate from the film and remember that you and the film are not the same thing, and that these rejections are not rejections of you, but yeah. And I was wondering, in terms of, again, I'm thinking about, I suppose you could call it aftercare, right? In terms of, let's say you've made the film and you spent your budget and you did your really good festival strategy, and it's super streamlined, and you come to the end of it, and maybe you got accepted to some, and maybe you didn't, and then you're thinking about your next film's complete, and now you're going to do it all again. Is there a kind of from your experience of having done this now with so many films and so many different filmmakers, is there what do you think is the main difference, kind of maybe doing it a second time for a second film versus a first film? What are those main learnings you think are important?
You would have learned a lot from that. I think you probably would, the key thing you'd learn is knowing how festivals work and that they're all different and there's no particular rhyme and reason. So the key thing that I always say to filmmakers before they start doing the festivals, and sometimes doesn't sink in until, halfway through the second film, is to remember that every festival is different in terms of how they approach the circuit, in terms of how they run their festival, how they communicate, how they program. They're not given a book that they have to follow,
right,
where it's like, that's how you do your festival. They do it on their own terms and their own way of doing things, which sometimes can work, but sometimes doesn't always work. So you just have to, treat each festival with a holistic, bespoke approach and, gel with them and work with them in the way that you can, both end up getting the right good result, but also just, adapt to their way of working and how they are. Not all festivals are organized. Some are really and some aren't. There's a lot of back and forth sometimes, but sometimes there's no back and forth and it's quite simple. Again, they're all different. And what you'll also learn as well is that some people think it can be quite simple, hire an intern to sort out all the festival screening materials. Not always the case, because an intern sounds intriguing, but when you're delivering your film to festivals, some festivals are very specific what kind of specs they want from a DCP or for a H624, a certain way to upload it, and need someone that knows that than just a random intern that is brand new to that, because it's a lot to learn, needs to be experienced. So I recommend that, if people are going to do that, that you do hire somebody that knows what they're talking about, because it's very important. That would be my key things that you'll probably learn, that is that it's not that simple.
Right.
It might sound like, doing submissions, it can be quite fun. But then, when it gets into getting to festivals, it can be time consuming, getting everything ready and organized and chasing. And sometimes you have to be ahead of the festival,
right.
So sometimes you think, I haven't got this email yet. And they're like, oh, sorry, we haven't sent it yet. Or here we go. Or it's just gotten into lost in the ether, whatever it might be. You have to get on top of these things, because if you miss a deadline and it's unforeseen circumstance, you could get the film withdrawn. So, because they're all different. Some might let you off with that. Again, it's a whole thing where you just can't, they're very unpredictable.
Yes, right.
So it's important. I think a lot of people learn to be, on the second film, to be flexible and know what to expect. There's going to probably be more time than what they think.
Sure.
But they'll also have experience of going to festivals, no doubt, and how much fun they were.
Yes.
And how much they learn about themselves and their film in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are so much fun, and it is such an experience. Just before we wrap up, I wondered, because I'm sure you've been now to so many festivals and you're really familiar with them. Is there anything that you've ever experienced at a festival that is, or in the communication with them about submissions or about the film being accepted and the materials, or anything that has led you to not work with them anymore? So things to look out for. I'm just thinking of, a young filmmaker gets into a festival and the film festival asks them for X, Y, and Z, and they perhaps don't realize they're being taken advantage of, or they're not being treated very well. I suppose similar to the red flag question, but it's like after a festival, is there anything that would occur that you would think, actually, that would prevent me from perhaps working with them again and submitting again another film to them?
Yeah, I've had a few of those, and that's been more a case of, the pictures don't match up what the festival actually is. So there's one festival that is kind of well known, but the client went there and was like, we're not having this screening in this nice big theater. It's in a disused shopping mall.
Oh my gosh.
So we were like, what? And then we had to report the festival and all that kind of thing, because it was, they didn't even explain, why it was there or what the pictures kind of made out of, nothing, or even meet them properly. It was really strange, but it just wasn't going to work. So we were like, no, this isn't really good. And obviously some people, because they won awards, they'll give a good review. We were like, yes, I know we won an award, but it wasn't the best experience. And we had investors there, and it was like, this really not very nice shopping mall, and having it screened, you could hear, it wasn't even a theater, and you could hear upstairs people walking around and building. It was just a nightmare, so something like that is, when you go to festival and it's like poor communication when you're there and before, and then not the best in terms of screening facilities and projection. Is something that we don't like to do, because it's no point with a filmmaker going, because they won't meet people and they won't have a good turnout, and it'll be in a venue that it's not good for filmmakers to show pictures of on Instagram.
Right.
So that's the key thing, is how they're treated, and the communications overall, and the projection.
Great. Yeah, that's all. Those are all, really great things. And I'm just thinking of the festivals that I've been to and what was a good experience and what was not a great experience. And definitely the actual venue of the screening makes a big difference, right? If it's actually in a cinema or if it's in a conference room where they've pulled down a projector screen.
Yeah.
Right. It makes a big difference. Absolutely.
That's different. I mean, some festivals do have that, but they're well done and it's professional still. But also they'll be honest and tell you,
right.
And it's like, here's what it's going to be, in this, and here's the projection, here's what we need, and it's pretty clear. But then when they're saying it's something that it isn't, is the worst, so.
Yeah, so it like many things on the internet, any young people listening, don't get catfished. And if you do get catfished, then don't do it again. That's a great lesson to learn. If the pictures don't match the experience, that's a good lesson to learn.
Exactly. No, I agree. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, let me ask you, Rebekah, what we love to ask our guests, which is, and I'm so interested in this question because of what you've already told us about your background. What were you up to as a teenager that you feel has an impact on what you do now?
So I've always, since I was born, I knew I was going to work in film because I had a passion for film. I'd always watch films with my dad in the evenings. I've seen it with him, like Top Gun. God knows how many times. And Pulp Fiction, I've seen millions. Of my favorite film you see in the background, actually, in my office. But I always knew there's been something in film. I didn't know quite what, but I knew it would be something creative, because I was a very creative person. And my dad worked in media. So he was an engineer for a TV station. It wasn't like, say, he did by producing, but he wasn't really, it wasn't director, but he was producing stuff and running a whole show at Central TV in the UK. So I knew it was something genetic in there. And then as I grew up, I began to get more creative. I had for like a month, I had this thing about being a hairdresser. And then I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm a hairdresser, but I want to be definitely creative. And then I liked writing. I went to creative writing, and then I really enjoyed that and writing stories. And then I really enjoyed it with the PhD. So that was all good. But yeah, so that was exciting because I knew it was going to be something in the creative world, but I didn't know what it was. But I didn't think it would be film festivals until it actually got in that mode. And I was like, this is what it is. I did do producing. I have produced a short film, which I, prefer producing a film festival. But I just love the whole, like, what I do now is I do very creative strategies because, I bring in all the niches, bring all the patterns, get the angles to get a result and know how it all works. It's really fun. I wouldn't do anything else besides this. So that kind of stuff is what I like to do. But it was so weird how, something you think, I said to myself, I was going to be now definitely in the world of writing. It'll be creative writing in films and shorts and academia. But I was like, maybe it's not. And the festival pops up and it's like, okay, it's definitely not.
Yeah. Great. And if you could give teenage Rebekah any advice, what would you say to her?
The key thing I would say to myself now, if I could turn back the clock, would be to, whenever you start up a business and whenever you're going to be doing something that's in a different world and it requires more guidance, get a mentor. I really wish the day I start my business, I just got a mentor that day, business mentor, to help me. I mean, I would have learned a lot. I've done a lot of things the hard way, but I'm glad I did because I learned from it and I take it on board. But I would just say to anybody, no matter what age, or when you're starting a new project or you need something that's different or whatever, is to get a mentor, because that will really help you save time and money. You don't even have to pay them. You're going to make that back without wasting time, money on other things. You'll be a good investment.
Definitely. Yeah. Reaching out for help is always something that
and don't be afraid to do that. Because I got to the point where when I had to reach out for help, I was pretty like, oh God, I was going in circles. But then like this woman came in, Jolanda, and also Ed, and they were just phenomenal. And it just overnight, I was like, okay, now I do. And it was fine. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
And if people noticed it on social media, were like, oh, okay, this is different now. And I was like, yeah. They were like, this is incredible. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Because I've got just the right advice in terms of just how to pivot and tweak it what I didn't have before.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been, I know that there's lots of our listeners who are thinking about getting into the festival circuit and are really wanting to look at a life for their films beyond just showing it to their friends on YouTube or whatever. So I think this is going to be just super helpful. And your ebook is called Film Festivals and Looking After Your Mental Health, which I think is obviously a really important part of this whole thing, as we've discussed. I think our listeners can find that anywhere you can find ebooks, I presume. And we'll
yes. If you just go to my website on my shop page, it's all on there. It's the first one you see.
Great, brilliant. And we'll when this episode comes out, we'll share that on our social media as well, so that everybody can access that and find out. And thank you so much, Rebekah. This is just absolutely, I've learned lots of thinking about our Young Film Academy films on the festival circuit, and so we're really just appreciative of your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was so much fun, and thank you very much all for listening.
Yeah.
That was super cool. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to her, and thanks to Rebekah Smith for speaking to us, really, Amelia.
Absolutely. I think, she's got such interesting things to say, and gives you a really different perspective, I think, on the festival circuit and sort of what it means and how to approach it. And I just wondered, what has been your experience as a filmmaker? Because obviously you're an indie filmmaker, you've put lots of films on the festival circuit. What kind of success or lack thereof did you have? How was your experience with it?
I would describe it as more commonly painful. I think I did really well on the student circuits. So when I was younger, I think my films were very good for my age. And certainly in younger film festivals, there's sometimes age brackets. So especially the films I was making as a teenager, I think were quite good for someone my age. Then as I got into sort of older categories and or more when I went into sort of just full on adult world, it took a while to then get up to speed, I think, and make stuff that was good enough. And I would probably spend, probably not enough money submitting to festivals, but too much considering I was getting nothing out of it. And for the most part, it would just be mostly rejections. But I did have one film called The Mime, which did travel, and it literally, I think it got into like almost 90% of the festivals I submitted it to.
Wow. And
the only real crime is the fact I didn't submit it to more festivals. I just sort of didn't have the money to put it into more places. I remember I think I had like £60 left, and it was either Leeds or this other festival, and I remember just having both in the inbox in what's the Film Freeway, the festival website, and I decided on Leeds, and it got into Leeds. So I mean, it may well have got into the other one as it happens, but it was amazing when I finally did have a film that got in. It was it was really cool, and I think the accolades mean something. I didn't get much off the back of it. To be honest, I expected once it started going to these festivals, and some of them were like Oscar and BAFTA BAFTA and Oscar qualifying festivals. So I thought the phone would ring, but the phone did not ring. But it is a useful thing for you to then approach other people, and certainly if you go into the big festivals, then you can meet sort of agents and managers and other producers off the back of that, is what I would say.
Definitely. And I think, the other great thing about festivals, right, is kind of garnering laurels and, being able to show that the film has been kind of seen. All of those things are helpful. And as Dr. Smith told us, really the aim for your film and festival shouldn't be throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, but rather, having a decisive strategy. Because, as your story highlighted, Dan, you'll have a particular amount in your budget that you could utilize. And so you do have to kind of get creative and really purposeful in that approach.
Absolutely, absolutely. How was I know obviously Lemons, the Project Paradiso film that Young Film Academy produced, that's done really well at festivals, which I think you and Lee have sort of been heavily involved in sort of making that happen.
Yes, definitely. We did.
As well as the producing team.
Yeah, the producing team was super helpful, and I felt really proud that even without having spoken to Dr. Smith, we did sort of do what she recommended. We figured out a strategy that was very decisive and aimed toward particular places and festivals that we thought the film would play well in. And I was really heartened to hear that, the ratio that she shared with us was 1 in 11. So about 10% is what you can expect as your success rate. And the success rate for Lemons has been closer to 1 in 4. So we've done really well with that film in the festival circuit. And we're very proud of that first Project Paradiso cohort for sure.
Amazing. And hopefully, obviously, 2024 Project Paradiso, I'm sure, is going to do just as well. And that also can be more targeted as well at certain horror festivals, right? Because it is a horror film.
Exactly.
So it has these niche festivals that it can also go for as well as other festivals. Because there's sort of this big fandom for genre throughout the world, which is really cool. So it's going to be exciting having it in front of the eyeballs of that community.
Definitely. And I think that's that's another thing to think about when you're wanting to make a film is maybe try to make a genre film first, because that can be a really helpful sort of way into the festivals that then might be able to open up opportunities to make other films that are stories that you've, had inside you for a long time. But genre is a way, as you said, Dan, they've got inbuilt fandoms that can be helpful in the success of the film on the festival circuit.
100%. Even I don't want to do just horror forever. I want to expand and do other films as well. As much as I love horror and love telling dark stories, I think it's great to be able to spread one's wings and tell stories across different genres. But be tactical, be specific.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we have a question from Stephen, who is in Stevenage. Wow, Stephen from Stevenage. Hilarious.
Sorry to laugh, Stephen.
And he wants to know, he says he's made a film, but he doesn't feel brave enough to submit it to festivals. And what should he do to get started? And, I think what I would say, and obviously we'll let you chime in, Dan, as the resident filmmaker, but what I would say, what I've learned from Dr. Smith, what I think is a good approach to this in general is that if you're a young person and you've got something that you're proud of, put it out there. Make a strategy, like she said, figure out where it might fit in, but also start in those student festivals, because there's tons of them all around the world, and they're always looking for championing young people's voices. So I would say just give it a shot. There's nothing to lose.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, you've also got online as well. But I think you want to get into the habit of showing your film to people. You should be showing it to your family. You should be showing it to your friends. You need to see how well your filmmaking is landing and whether audiences are feeling the way you intend them to feel at any given moment. So I think it's really important to get used to it. So let yourself down gently. But if you are serious about being a filmmaker, then you need to be serious about showing it to people and seeing whether your filmmaking is effective. That's what I would say. Yeah,
and also I think on that, right, also not being too precious about it. If you do end up showing it to some people and it isn't landing, it's thinking, okay, how could it be amended, edited, changed so that it might land a bit better, and not feeling too precious about it. Films are never finished, right? I think that's something that any filmmaker who makes a film might watch it in a few years and go, I wish I had done X, Y, and Z. I wish we had changed that. So it's seeing it as a living, breathing piece of work rather than a completely finished product that, has to win the Oscar, baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, thank you for joining us. This has been lovely. I hope you've enjoyed your time with Amelia and Rebekah. I certainly have. And we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.
See you soon.
See you soon.